Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to yet again another season preview, and today we are previewing the Columbus Blue Jackets. Quite possibly the most mediocre team last year. So when I was watching my videos, during these type of previews, I usually go back and rewatch all the previous ones that I have made, so I know what the heck my projections were back then. And I said this team was going into a rebuild. And I said this team was obviously heading towards it. A lot of people were saying that as well. I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the odd man out like usual. But anyways, they really weren't. But they weren't like an amazing team either. But they weren't bad. They were just mediocre. That's literally what they were. They had a almost completely 500 record. It was unreal. They went 37, 38, and 7 last season for 81 points. They had 262 goals for and 300 goals against. Obviously, they missed the playoffs. Their leading scorer was actually Jacob Voracek, and this shocked me. 6 goals, 56 assists for 62 points. And you have Elvis Merzlikins there as well with a 27, 23, and 7 record with a 3.22 goals against average. Obviously, Merzlikins there showed some really good potential as a goalie for a mediocre Columbus team this past season. Should bring that into next season. But they did have quite an offseason. It was pretty eventful, in all honesty. Your departures were Oliver Bjorkstrand, Dean Kukan, Gabriel Carlson, and Alexander Texier. Now, Texier didn't leave through free agency or any trades. He's still technically a part of the team, but he said he's not going to play this entire season and go over to Sweden, or it might be Switzerland. I'm pretty sure it's Sweden, though, and play over there for this season. So, Texier may come back next year, maybe not, but as far as we know right now, he's not playing this season. So it's not looking good for Texier fans, and it is unfortunate because I've been a big fan of Texier for a long time. Remember back in the days of 2019 when Columbus swept the Lightning? That was quite the series. In their acquisitions, they didn't make that many, but they acquired the biggest free agent on the market in Johnny Gaudreau from the Calgary Flames. Huge move for Columbus, really boosts their top 6. They also acquired Eric Gudbranson, his teammate, which they signed him to a god-awful contract. That contract was terrible. That was not a good contract at all. 4x4, yikes. Then they also acquired a depth forward, probably at best a fourth liner, Matthew Olivier. Not a bad forward, but probably at best just a fourth line guy. Overall, pretty eventful offseason. It wasn't a bad offseason by any means, and it was pretty good all around. In all honesty, you look at their projected lineup here. See, for your top 6, you have Johnny Gaudreau, Boone Jenner, and Patrick Laine. Then you have Gustav Nyquist, Jack Roslovic, and Jacob Voracek. Interesting. That first line is crazy. Of Gaudreau, whoopsies. It's not the first time it's happened. 5 o'clock for a Nordic mailbag, so I usually have an alarm set, but we don't need to make one today. So a pretty interesting first line there of Gaudreau, Jenner, Laine. I would imagine that would change when guys like Cole Sillinger and Ken Johnson really get into the feels of everything. They could get first line minutes. Come around the middle or the end of the season. But right now, not a bad top 6. You look at their bottom 6, a lot of interesting players here. Very young bottom 6, if it's actually what that bottom 6 is going to be. Marchenko, Sillinger, Chinnikov, Robinson, Johnson, Olivier, and then for some extra players, you have Danforth, Corrali, and Gauntz. That is a lot of young players. That's Marchenko, Sillinger, Chinnikov, Johnson, Danforth is decently young, and Gauntz as well. That is a young bottom 6 and a young amount of players. Now, Ken Johnson obviously looked really good in the World Juniors, so I'd imagine he brings that to the NHL. May take him a little bit, but I would imagine that's what happens. And this team looks incredibly young. And when all these guys get into this lineup, this team could actually be dangerous. And that is something we haven't said for Columbus for a while now. Columbus was kind of that team where they were a solid, underrated playoff contender, but they weren't a cup team. And they weren't like a team that could win in the playoffs like they could in 2019. They beat Toronto they beat Toronto in the round or the preliminary rounds into the playoffs in 2020, but it wasn't like an impressive win. It was just they barely edged out Toronto, and then they obviously lost to Tampa. So this team if they do want to make a return to the playoffs, they are going to have to rely on those young guys. Definitely. They have some good forwards there in the top six, but it's not a top six that can really take you to the playoffs. I'm just being honest. They got to really rely on those young guys to really play well. As for your defense, you have Zach Werenski and Adam Boak as your first pairing. Gavrikov and Gudbranson as your second pairing. Then you have Bean and Blackenberg as your third. And then you have Bayreuther and Peak as some extra defensemen. Not a bad defense. I like that. I like that overall. I like Werenski and Boquist, very two underrated defensemen in the league. Gavrikov as well, very solid defensive type defender, and then Gudbranson as well as Gudbranson. And then you got some young guys. Jake Bean's still fairly young. Blackenberg, Peak, and Bayreuther. We'll see those guys get some chances, obviously, for Columbus this season. But overall, I don't mind that defense, really. And as for your goaltending team, you have Elvis Merzlikins and Yunus Korpisalo. Then you have Danil Tarasov as your third-string goalie. Korpisalo, I probably said this last year. I can't remember, but I think he most likely gets traded. I really do think that he is probably definitely up there on the list of goalies that could be dealt out of Columbus. And there are teams looking for goalies, so maybe a team like, I don't know, Vegas calls up Korpisalo and the Blue Jackets like, hey, Korpisalo for this and that. But Vegas has kind of already confirmed they're really going to keep their tandem of Brossoit and Thompson, even though that's not going to work out well. But anyways, I would imagine Korpisalo gets traded, but at this point, I mean, like, if he doesn't, he's just going to stay with Columbus. I mean, like, there's really no point. No team wants him. He was all right for stretches there, but these past couple of years, he hasn't been all that. So we'll see how he does. And Tarasov has the chance to maybe put up some potential. We'll see him potentially play some more games than he did last year. Some big questions for this team coming up. How will the team do without Texier? Obviously, Texier is probably, at best, a third liner. I'm going to be honest. It's not going to affect them all too much, especially if those young guys like Johnson and Sillinger and Chinnikov come in and play really well. But Texier was a big part in Columbus last year. So we'll see how they can do without him. And then here's the other question, and I think it really depends on how much ice time these guys get. How will the young guys do? And as I mentioned, you have a ton of young players on this roster coming up. So let's see if Johnson and Sillinger and Chinnikov get the chances that they need to become a really good forward in the NHL. Columbus could be one of those underrated, explosive type teams this coming season, and I'm all for it. Anyways, here looking at your point-o-meter for Columbus, according to the fantasy guide, courtesy of the Hockey News. They have Gaudreau leading the way with 81 points. That seems pretty realistic. I don't think Gaudreau's going to have that peak 115-point season we saw out of him this year. I don't think that happens. Then you obviously have Patrick Laine at second with 63, Voracek with 60 in third, Jenner with 53, and then Zach Werenski with 50. So obviously some players who have been with Columbus for a while. They should be pretty good. They're very solid forwards, and they definitely should put up some good points, obviously. As for your sleeper or your bust, it's Patrick Laine. So despite a few lackluster seasons, Laine ranks 14th in goals since entering the league. He scored a 38-goal pace during an injury-shortened year without a playmaking center to feed him pucks. Goals remain a premium fantasy stat. That's for fantasy, obviously, because this is a fantasy book. But Laine really does depend on Laine. It really does, because with Laine, the thing is with him is that he's had a few bad seasons. I think this year, though, playing with Gaudreau and Jenner, I think with that first line, and especially if Johnson comes up and plays first line, I think that could honestly be dangerous. I think that could honestly be a dangerous first line, and Laine could probably maybe even put up like 45, maybe even 50 goals. I still think Laine has the potential to do that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now for your question, do they make the playoffs? Now, in 2021, I said yes. I was wrong. In 2022, I said no, and I was right. So, does Columbus get back into the playoffs this coming season? I've asked myself that a lot. With that really competitive Metropolitan Division, that really competitive Eastern Conference altogether, it really is a wonder whether or not they're going to make it. And they could be one of those teams that does really well, but doesn't make it. So, we will see. I don't think they finish top 3 in that division. They'll probably be at best a wild card team if we're being honest. Probably like first wild card at best. But overall, I think Columbus should be better this season. Maybe not playoffs, but I think they definitely should be better. So anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. For all my sports later, really appreciate. Apologies for this coming out so late. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.